Hey, this is Billy from Perma Pastures Farm. Let's talk today about the unwanted work that you have to do on your homestead. All right, well, everybody sees that part of the job where you're doing the idyllic farm stuff, you know, working with your animals, maybe you're planting some things. Too many of us, I'll put it that way, too many of us don't necessarily stop to consider the things that need to be set up before you get to those places where things are kind of running like a top or running like a really good watch. And I don't know that you ever really truly find yourself there. You just kind of know whatever problems you run into and what to do to mitigate them. Well, here you see behind me is a nasty, nasty thicket. Now, the last pigs we had out here, the idea was to run them down. You can't see the whole scope of it, but it essentially runs this way. The idea was to run the pigs through, and they would basically do a lot of the work for us, and they did. I'd say in totality, in all of the work that needs to get done here in terms of removal, the pigs have probably done a third of it. Now, you can't keep them too long in one spot, otherwise you run into bigger problems. Now, we did leave them a little long in some of this area, but they did do a fair amount of clearing for us. But this is the unwanted or unspoken of word, or the things that are seldom seen, let's say, when you do farm work that a lot of people I don't think address enough of. And there's so much of this because typically what we show you is what we're doing when we're doing a particular project. We don't spend really any time at all explaining all the things we do, all the things behind the camera you don't see, to get to the point where, in this case, we're going to be planting an orchard alongside this road. Now, what it requires from us is basically the work that the pigs didn't do, or cows didn't do, or chickens didn't do. So you want to employ them as best you can to do the work that is going to aid you, and at the same time you're aiding them and allowing them to be what they were designed to be and do the things they were designed to do. But where we're at right now is we got to remove all this because we want to put in an orchard. And eventually, as we tear it down, it's going to go right over here into that big pile of thicket that you see over there right now. Now, the idea being that we take it from here, it's already going, our burn pile is right over there. And the area where we intend to chip wood, it's over there as well. Now, some of you may be saying, hold on, man, it really doesn't seem too in keeping with the permaculture ethic to burn. Well, I got news for you. It doesn't always work out the way you want. When you deal with viney, nasty, thorny stuff like this, it's not always in your best interest to find a way to compost it, because the amount of time you got to take your cost-benefit analysis here and ask yourself, okay, is the time it's going to take for me to do that worth the effort? And in the aggregate, did I waste more time doing that when it would have made more sense doing something that was a simpler, something that would answer that problem much better and simply. And in this case, when it comes to this really, really thick and nasty stuff, we already got to do burns anyway. We got to make more biochar. We got to make more bone sauce. We got to burn anyway. So it only makes good sense that if we're going to be making those things, that we do what we can to try to get some of the unwanted stuff out of the way at the same time. So that's really the plan. And it takes some time. So we're going to get this stuff out of here, get it over there really, really close to the burn pile. So when we get to do that, when we get to burning, it's already there waiting on us. All right, so it's the next day, and as you can see, folks, I mean, from here to there, it's largely done. I mean, notwithstanding the little bit of Chinese silvergrass over there that needs to be removed, and which is a plague around these parts because nobody seems to know how to get rid of it. We have plans on that because I know what it dislikes, but we'll talk about that in future videos. Anyway, minus that little bit there, this whole area, and I know it was hard to see in that time lapse, but this whole area had everything in it. It was the biggest thicket, I think, and the nastiest I think I've ever cleared. Now, the little interstitial space that I can't really give you a sense of right now is is, I'd say, about where that Chinese silvergrass is down to the next pile of thicket. Now, today, that's our focus. And that's what we do. We go out here on the days we're able, when we can fit in the time to do it. We come out here, we work a little bit more, work a little bit more. Before you know it, you're there. The idea on this next piece, it's totally different than the one we had. So it's going to have its own little bits of entanglement. It's funny how that when you do this sort of thing, let's say it's a two-person job. And the golden rule typically in construction is if you do a two-person job with one person, it takes 4 times longer. Well, I got news for you. When you do this kind of work, it doesn't take 4 times longer. It takes you 8 to 10 times longer if you attempt to do it by yourself. Now, there are other mechanical means you could go about doing. I could easily hook this thing up to the truck or the car even, pull on it. If I was working by myself, I could wrap a strap around it, pull on it, put it, hold it in gear, cut a little bit more. You can go about it that way. It's just a matter of how you want to go about doing it. But with us right now, it just makes better sense for one person to pull and the other to cut it loose as we're doing it. So with that said, it looks like we got about, I don't know, maybe an hour and a half. I'm looking in the sky as if I know that based on that. No, I know that based on the app on my phone. So I got about an hour and a half before the rain starts coming down. So we'll see if we can get that done. Considering how much we got done in an hour and 15 minutes, I'm hopeful. But we'll see. So it's the next day after the next day, and this is just another example. Okay, some of the chickens are acting up, sorry about that. Anyway, this is the day after the day we first started this, and this is how it goes. Folks, the point I'm trying to convey here is that the majority of the work we do are things you don't see on camera. They're the things, the infrastructure builds, or the clearing that we do that enable us to be able to do what it is we want to do. And then there's other things that are just plain boring to try to convey through camera, which is what you're looking at right here. This area is ultimately going to be the food forest section. We got an orchard that essentially runs down the driveway, and then it makes a transition in this portion you do see into what's going to be a food forest. Now, we're doing it a couple of different ways, and we're combining a bunch of different techniques from a bunch of different people. And as it unfolds, we'll explain that in much greater detail. But what you see here is essentially stacks and stacks of cardboard that are covered up by wood mulch. And here's the part I'm really trying to point out, is that from this part here, and of course there's more to do, all the way up the driveway is probably the equivalent of somewhere in the neighborhood of about, and I'm being conservative, I'd say somewhere in the neighborhood of about 20 yards of mulch that you see here. And the way we have to do it, because of how things are situated, I'm bringing it back in the truck. We're putting it in buckets while one of us is laying down some cardboard, and then we take it by bucket out of the truck. Now imagine doing 20 yards that way, because it's really the only way we could take a wheelbarrow and do it that way. It's just not as efficient as using buckets, getting it out of the truck and bringing it over. Now, could I use a dump trailer? Sure. But then it creates a whole different avenue of problems that I just can't even address right now for reasons concerning topography that just aren't going to work right now, because I don't have a means to turn that thing around efficiently. It just makes more sense to get 2 yards at a time and bring it back here. And I'm getting these chips for nearly free. But the point I'm trying to point out is that I get a lot of questions, so does William, concerning, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, or hey, this homestead life, boy, it sure does look idyllic. And these are the things I'm not, and I dare say most homestead channels aren't covering in the kind of detail that's probably needed. And I think the reason for that is that it's mostly boring. It's not something you typically want to watch. But in all honesty, I bet we spend 70 to 80% of our time outside doing these things that you don't see. And that's the thing I'm really trying to point out for the people out there that are considering doing this or making some in most cases, some serious lifestyle transitions. Let's say you're an accountant. You're used to sitting at a desk and you see only the videos that are easy to film, that I'm taking a small snapshot of the things that happen around here, and you're only seeing a tiny, tiny portion of it. And what I'm trying to point out with this and the clearing up there is this is the majority of the things we do. We still have a ton of trees we need to take out. And then, of course, you got them down. You got to do something with them. And these are the things that I'm trying. I haven't been really good about it, but I'm trying to get better at conveying all the things that most people don't want to do, that are troublesome, that are tough, that are nasty, that are filthy, scratch you up all day trying to get these thorns out of there. All those things that are really the lion's share of what happens when you're building something from the ground up. And that's exactly what we're doing here. And folks, I would be remiss if I didn't also point out that even though these tasks are uncomfortable and nasty and just not fun, if at the end of the day you can't do it with joy in your heart, then maybe this isn't for you. Then maybe this isn't, because if you can't do it with joy in your heart, even though these are what some would call filthy tasks, if you can't do that and have a high degree of, man, I know where I'm going, I'm enjoying every second of it, even though it may be uncomfortable. If you can't do it that way, then maybe you should reconsider this lifestyle, because this is the lion's share of the kind of work you do when doing this. So here in a little while, we're going to get up there, we're going to clear some more, and then ultimately, William and I will knock down some of these very large trees that I'm not looking forward to taking down, but it's got to be done for us to make room for the things we want to put in. So, hit that subscribe bell, tell your friends about us, get all the notifications, all that sort of jazz. And then just remember, folks, this is the bare bones of what it takes to get this kind of work done. So until next time, this is Billy, the Permaculture Pimp Daddy, where PIMP stands for permaculture is my passion. And this is the reason why. We'll see you next time.